Hello and welcome to today's Industry Week webinar, Becoming a Resilient Manufacturer, Leveraging Digital Transformation for Sustainability and Longevity, sponsored by GE Vernova. I'm Robert Schoenberger, Editor-in-Chief of Industry Week. Before we begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you are having audio difficulties or your slides are not advancing, simply hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. If you are running pop-up blocking software, you will need to disable it to view the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the question mark help button in the upper right corner to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the maximize icon in the upper right corner to enlarge the window. We welcome your questions during today's event. To submit your questions, simply type your question into the Ask a Question window on the left side of your screen and then hit the Submit button. We'll be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time and we'll add them to the queue. Don't forget to check out the Resources tab on your console for additional information provided by our sponsor, GE Vernova. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Industry Week website within the next day for you to review. You'll be notified by email when the archive is available. When the webinar ends, please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen. I would now like to welcome today's speaker. Joe Gersel is Director of Manufacturing Execution System Software at GE Vernova Prophecy Software and Services. Joe has worked in the software and manufacturing industries for more than 30 years, spending time in various roles including engineering, sales, services, and product management for large global companies. He has partnered with hundreds of companies in nearly every manufacturing sector, from food and beverage and consumer packaged goods to aerospace and automotive, working to improve their operations, solutions, and processes. For more information about our speaker, please check out the Speaker Details tab on your console. Welcome, Joe, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate the introduction. So today we're going to talk about, we're going to start talking with the challenges that manufacturers face. So we have food safety listed here, but it really applies to all manufacturing. And when you talk about the things you manufacture, tracking usage like raw materials, labor, etc., managing the quality of your product, and applying best practices and creating work instructions, and then accessing the data's information, accessing that information and reporting upon it is very important, operationalizing that data. It also applies to sustainability, be it electricity or water or air or gas, and how that impacts your quality and your cost of manufacturing, and then applying best practices on how you improve your sustainability. And as we're going to find out in this presentation, accessing that information becomes really critical. So we're probably all familiar with these trends on this slide. The most important one that plays really into all of them is digital transformation, because capturing that data digitally is so important to applying these trends. You can do lean via, certainly via paper, but adding a digital element to it improves the ability to perform that task. And then, of course, applying data to artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, it's critical that data needs to be obviously digital. As more and more customers move to the cloud and move their MES to the cloud, it's turning into a way to, again, build large amounts of data over a short period of time. Now, whether you run your MES on the cloud or on the edge, it doesn't really matter, because software like MES, specifically MES in this case is what we're going to talk about, is really critical to sustainability. And you're going to see, as I said, and how that plays into gathering that data and making it accessible to things like reporting. So when we look at why sustainability is such an urgent issue for industrial companies, well, energy costs, if you haven't noticed, are rising everywhere. And tensions, geopolitical tensions, such as the war in Ukraine and et cetera, are really adding volatility to these costs, right? As we look at the future, this is probably not going to change. It's probably going to get worse. So as the energy landscape also is changing, renewable energy, low carbon energy is coming online and more into full swing. And so the impact on energy prices and even energy availability will probably be significant. You know, energy gets a lot of the attention, right? But its little sister is really water. and the way that our customers are being impacted by water challenges and with respect to how they distribute and manage and use the water to produce the products and run their facilities. They're finding that their sites are starting to be recognized as low water or water stressed, I should say, regions of the world. And the cost associated with the managing water is increasing. And so is the risk of obtaining that water. And especially as the climate changes and changing weather patterns and even changing water management practices unfold. And in response to all of this, of course, regulations are coming online that are changing the way that governments and other bodies are looking for companies to police and manage their energy and sustainability usages. So the pressure, based on all these facts you just talked about, the pressure on acting on sustainability is increasing dramatically. Investor pressure is a big part of it, right? More than 3 in 4 investors view sustainability as a risk mitigation strategy, right? Investors aren't the only people, though. Consumers and those that use your products are also very interested in how you manage your resources. Of course, government's legislation has certainly come into play in all of this. In fact, the Government Sustainability Reporting Directive in the EU has started January 2024. The first reports are due out January 2025. That affects 50,000 companies in the EU alone and another 10,000 in North America. The other government bodies such as the SEC in the United States and even state bodies like California are adding additional pressure on manufacturers to meet sustainability goals. So again, going back to digital transformation, that's why it's so important to have a digital transformation strategy in place and ready to go so that you can start collecting this data and reporting upon it. So when we talk about reporting upon it, manufacturers are setting targets, trying to meet these expectations that are set forth in the regulations. But often it's hard to put that into actionability. So here we see an increase in companies submitting targets and commitments aligned with the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which is a standards-setting organization. In most companies, the magnitude and the timelines kind of show a gap. You can see it right here on the screen. So when you look at the reduction targets, they fall between 20, if you look at this chart here, between 20 and 50%, they're heavily skewed towards near-term reductions. Very few companies have a long-term plan or a plan for full decarbonization. So how do we act on these sustainability goals? How do we actually take action and make changes to not only act on the sustainability goals, but also keep our operational objectives high in mind? So you first have to start by recognizing that these are interrelated, right? So your operational and your sustainability goals need to go hand in hand. The KPIs and the actions that you take to address them also need to go hand in hand. They have to be priorities that are managed together. So the problem is we don't really do this today. We often externalize the sustainability impacts. We keep them separate. We perform these activities in silos. But that's really not the way you need to do it, right? You really need to create a pathway to actioning your targets between operational and sustainability priorities, as this Venn diagram shows. You really have to aim for sustainable operational excellence instead of just operational excellence. So balancing these two together. So that means balancing short-term goals with long-term investments so they ensure business continuity, manage the financial risk, and obviously improve your shareholder value, which it's all about. So as we move into trying to do this together, it becomes, the synergies that are between these two, between profitability and sustainability are obviously very important. So to do this, think about the context of your shop floor. The plant floor context is really critical. When I say context, I'm talking about things like downtime events, the actual production events, And we'll go into this in a little more detail as we move through here. But they're really critical to operational sustainability goals for your manufacturers and really managing them holistically. So to capture synergies and recognize trade-offs between them, a new set of challenges have to be solved. Manufacturers need to have the ability to drive relevant sustainability KPIs down to the plant floor with granularity needed to act upon that data and in concert with your operational activities. You need to be able to see the sustainability KPIs in relation to the operational performance management routines and break these silos down that we just talked about between the various operational and sustainability, the two operational and sustainability teams, I should say. And you really need to understand the context to determine the most impactful ways to affect both operational and sustainability KPIs. So beyond boosting resilience and mitigating risk, there are synergies in sustainability and operational objectives, which improve profitability too. Again, keep in mind the things we talked about with investor, and they're key to the importance of the investor outlook on your sustainability goals. So let's talk about software and how that plays into the plan. So again, going back to digital transformation, data is really the foundation of it. And then the ability to contextualize that data in your facilities and across your entire organization and enterprise is critical. So the ability to connect to the machines, connect the equipment, capture that data in digital format, and then manage the data so that you know it's good data, right? So data governance is really important. Making it available for visualization, be it simple charts or even in-depth analysis or all the way down to predictive analytics and enabling those sort of things. So software can really provide a single experience for that, right? And giving the various personas that are involved in making the product, giving those people the right data at the right time in the right context. Again, context is king, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as we get into this presentation. So you really want common context driven by a model, and you want to be able to provide this information, again, to each persona as they need it across the organization, whether it be on the shop floor or up at the management level. So digitization really unlocks a lot of value in manufacturing, right? Again, I can't stress it enough, but you don't have to start out completely digital, right? You can start out by digitizing some processes first, then maybe bring it to the plant floor. So maybe you're gathering data in a time series manner to digitize your machine data, bringing that data to the personnel and having them start to enter data into the system. That can lead to tighter quality control, and you can use that data to bring your specs in, to bring your targets and limits in tighter to make better quality product. And then even move it out to supplier collaboration, right? So know which suppliers are providing the best raw materials for your products. And then, of course, the comprehensive product records so that you can report upon it. So in some industries, it's really important, like aerospace and defense and pharma, where you have to report an audit of how the process was followed to manufacturing the particular product that you built. So manufacturing really, software is really proven for operational challenges. We've been doing this for a long time, and now we can apply that to environmental challenges as well. So let's talk for a second about what an MES is. MES is really about managing the processes, the people, and the product, right? I like to say. So it's really about monitoring, synchronizing in real time all these pieces that are involved in transforming raw materials into either intermediate goods, of course, or finished goods that you ship out the shop floor. There's various parts to an MES. These are just some examples of things that might be part of an MES. A traditional MES is thought to have maybe some efficiency management, such as OEE and tracking that sort of thing on your equipment and in your processes and people. Quality management, of course, is critical to an MES, and the ability to track data that is occurring on the shop floor and compare it to the specifications and the limits that are set for those various pieces of the data, be they coming from machines or coming from people. Production management and actually understanding and tracking the genealogy and tracing the flow of material through the shop floor, the processes that were used to create the finished goods, and the genealogy, as I said, executing across the various raw materials coming into your product. And then analyzing a batch, right? So if you're in a batch processing environment, analyzing that batch and detecting the golden batch and being able to apply, apply it against ISA S88 standards. So when we talk about what an MES actually delivers, it delivers both top line and bottom line advantages, right? So I really like this slide because it shows how dramatically an MES can improve profit and reduce cost. It happens on both ends, right? Increasing throughput. These are actually real numbers that we've seen. 10% throughput increase, right? That's a big number. 20% efficiency improvement. That is not unusual for us to see that in our customers. And then improvement in quality, right? To reduce cost and produce better products out the door without producing as much waste. We see this frequently in this environment. So, of course, then there are things that are not on the books, like traceability, the ability to understand what was impacted by perhaps some tainted elements that happened to get into your process, right? So those are warranty costs, and the ability to understand and capture those things and stay out of the headlines of the Wall Street Journal, et cetera. So what are some, when we talk about practical applications, especially when we start talking about sustainability and tracking things like wages, right? So water, air, gas, electricity, and steam, right, is what we refer to as wages. And in the context of the shop floor, and in the context also, again, context, we're coming to that, is critical in addressing, tracking wages down to the context of things like production events, like a pallet that came off of a machine or a spool that came off of a facility that makes perhaps wire or hose. And manufacturers can really apply this data that they're capturing in their MES system directly to that those sustainability elements. And as we talk about quality and how that is impacted, again, with sustainability and understanding when various elements of the wages play into the quality of your product and so forth. So when we look at embedding sustainability in manufacturing, the MES system, we talk about, again, we have to collect the data and consolidate that data. Now, again, collecting the data is could come from machines or equipment, could come from people, and then consolidating that data where there's things like summaries, right? Mins, max, averages, standard deviations, and all the various type of calculations you can do on this data. So MES can be helpful to achieve the sustainability, again, sustainability operational excellence through these elements. So making the data available to whoever needs it, as we talked about before, consolidating that data from a variety of sources, could come from equipment or people, could come from other systems, putting environmental impacts or performance data in context that we're going to talk about in a little more detail, by product, by batch, by machine, by production line, exposing environmental performance data so that you have this data that can apply against analytics and machine learning tools, visualizing the data across functional teams, right? Visualization is pretty important when you have all this digital data, and the ability to actually use it in a visual is very important. And then broadcasting those improvements, or using it to mobilize resources to address the gaps and improve the KPIs and create a bottoms-up foundation for sustainability reporting, right? So how do we put all this into practice? How do we actually make this happen on the manufacturing floor in terms of gathering this data and applying it to sustainability? So when we talk about, first we talked, if you remember, I mentioned time series data and collecting that resource usage data and setting upper and lower control limits and applying and then overlaying the various events that occur against that energy data, right? So we can see we have a shift context, we have a product type context, a product change or material change, maintenance perhaps that happened, maybe a changeover from one product to another, some nonconformance that occurred, and how much energy was used in that nonconformance. We can start to apply all this directly to the different contexts of the shop floor, and we can see things like where the usage rate increased, or the rate of the usage rate increased, where you have the actual value of the energy go up, and see where it might be more efficient to perhaps make a certain product at a certain time, maybe during the night because it uses more energy. We've used this to see in situations where there are two identical machines making identical products and one uses twice the energy. We're able to track that down based on applying the energy usage to the product runs on the specific machines. And we've seen this actually come into play in real world examples. So when you talk about, what about genealogy? We mentioned that before. Genealogy capabilities in the MES allows for tracking things like environmental impact data, right? To be captured as variables based on the SKU or the batch or the lot, and then each process, along each process step, right? So of various parts across the line, or if it's a manual process, various stations across the work area. This helps facilitate product sustainability data per unit, which can be then used internally to improve the design, or maybe communicate externally, like we talked about for the reporting that we all are going to have to do. And addressing data in a holistic data collection, storage, it's important to capture that all in a structured data model, again in context, batch, product, grade, etc. And enforce digital work processes. Again, digital transformation allows us to get rid of those dusty old binders that sit on the shop floor that have old work instructions in them, or have various post-it notes applied to the binder. So moving to digital transformation, again, is important in terms of genealogy as well. So when we talk about genealogy, we can also apply that to the energy usage against, think about tracking genealogy as energy uses as genealogy. So how much genealogy you apply to each step in the process and each part of the process. So genealogy capabilities in the MES, allow you to really track the environmental impact, and that data can be captured again as variables against the product or the SKU or the lot, and at each process step along the way, right? So this helps facilitate the product sustainability data per unit, again, tracking it kind of as almost a traceability inside of that particular lot or grade that you created. Remember things like calculating and attributing CO2 data, right? And monitoring the carbon footprint. Going back again to letting your customers know, hey, what's the carbon footprint of this product? Maybe I want to make a decision based on buying your product or buying a competitor based on how well you perform sustainability and reach sustainability goals. So now we get into advanced analytics and really using them to optimize the entire system. So analytic tools can be laid on top of this data to further optimize production environments, and then fine-tune and balance between, remember, operational sustainability KPIs that have to go together and their various priorities. So tools like an MES for sustainability insights, to gather sustainability insights, can help benchmark the consumption, maybe explain some deviations and variations in performance, and ultimately help act on both operational and minimize resource consumption in terms of sustainability again. So again, calculating the consumption and reducing consumption and emissions, again, all play into this ability to capture that data. Digital transformation is important in this regard. So let's wrap it up, and let's talk again about what we're really how sustainability and operational KPIs go together. So you're struggling to act upon these targets that we're starting to set, and the difference between action and ambition, there's a gap, right? We saw that in an earlier slide. And then driving the active management of sustainability goals along with operational goals becomes critical, and that's where an MES, capturing that data digitally, can help you do that. And then the ability to drive, again, sustainable operational excellence, which is a new term, and I think it very applicable in our day and age, to help you manage sustainability and your production together in context of the various elements that you encounter on the shop floor. So really, I think if you take anything away, it's the need for a holistic management of both, again, sustainability, operational excellence, and integrating sustainability and operational KPIs together so that you're going to lead to long-term success and really improve your shareholder value and improve your respect in your industry, and really make an impact really on the environment and the world in general, which we all think is important. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Robert.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's see. Thank you for a great presentation. A few of you have already submitted questions, so we're going to jump right in. As a reminder, please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen at the end of this webinar. So moving to the first one, you mentioned a little bit of this in the presentation, but can you tell us how much how much savings have manufacturers seen when monitoring energy usage specifically? Just that one data point.
Yeah. So I did mention this already, but I think it was really interesting because it's one of my favorite stories in terms of sustainability. In that, again, we had a manufacturer that makes consumer product goods, packaged goods, and they had two lines that are making the exact same thing, sitting right next to each other, actually, on the same shop floor in the same factory. And for reasons unknown, and in fact, they didn't know it at all, that one line was consuming twice the energy as another line. So we were able to cut the energy usage on the second line all the way back down to be equal with the first line. But we didn't know that without tracking that sustainability information in a digital format. But we see customers gain, efficiencies in the range of 20%, and that's not unusual. I see it all the time. Throughput increases, like I mentioned before, even a 1% throughput increase on certain industries is dramatic. It's huge. So we see that a lot.
So thinking of that example, I think of in terms of like, say, home plumbing. If you notice your water bill going up, it is often the sign of a bigger problem. You have a leak somewhere, you have a bad toilet somewhere, something like that that's causing that extra water usage. Is it the same sort of thing when you're talking energy, with the two lines side by side, one's pulling twice the power as the other? Is that a sign of bad equipment? Are there advantages you get outside of strictly just cutting that energy usage?
Yeah. In fact, in that case, it had to do with some maintenance that needed to be done on the equipment that they just didn't know about. Without tracking that, without having that energy consumption information, they may not have known about that maintenance for a longer period of time and wasted a lot more energy. So absolutely.
Moving on to the next question. You mentioned cloud-based systems are seeing a lot of adoption of manufacturing systems. Are most of these manufacturing systems hosted on the cloud?
Well, today most of them are on premise, either in the actual plant or in a data center. But more and more customers are moving to the cloud, specifically with time series and MES, as we see, and other industrial apps. So the advent of things like 5G have made this possible, right? So before, if your MES system went down, you were in trouble. So many manufacturers even 10 years ago, when I would talk to them and we talk about going to the cloud, they'd be like, no way, because I can't ship product if my MES is down. Well, now with secondary and tertiary connectivity, they're far less worried about it. And the fact that 5G can handle the type of data load that they need to produce has made it much easier for them to adopt cloud. So now a lot of our customers are asking to go to the cloud. In fact, I've had a couple of customers say, if you're not in the cloud, I don't want to talk to you. So it's definitely being adopted.
We've talked about this in some other events and some stories that the IT manufacturing space had always been so buttoned down. Everything had to be 100% bulletproof. And that in some ways is getting in the way of new features, getting in the way of new functionality within systems that you get when you're on a cloud-based system.
Yeah, and people are not adopting the latest technology and latest software versions too, right? So as we add new versions and new capability, customers are not able to take advantage of them as quickly on premise as they are in the cloud, because now we have a monthly cadence that we send out updates on our cloud MES system, for example.
All right. Moving on to the next question. Where does manufacturing simulation help with metrics in the MES?
Yeah, so manufacturing simulations are interesting. I don't have a lot of experience in that, but I can say that you certainly could apply energy data to those simulations to start to understand better where that energy might be flowing, and also what might be a better environment inside your shop floor for producing. And it doesn't have to be energy. It could be air or gas. We've seen places where they had argon gas leaking and they didn't know about it, and a simulation was able to help them understand where that might be occurring.
I think back to my college physics classes that, I think we've all been in that physics lab space where you have to do 10 experiments to prove that gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, and you never get that number. You just have to keep kind of averaging it. With electricity, when we moved over to circuits, it was immediate. You were within 98, 99, 99.5% even on the first try. So when you see a big variation, it's generally noticeable and important there where it might not be in some other areas.
Yep.
Next question here is, can I do all of this with my time series database?
Yes, that is a good question. That's a great place to start, right? So getting that time series data is an excellent place to start, because you can attach the time series data to things like smart meters and start capturing energy usage. But if you think about context, time series data don't have the context built into them. So, it's all time, tag time, value, right? But it doesn't tell you necessarily when you change products, when you had a changeover, when you had a downtime event. That data is probably in there, but adding a layer of MES on top of it to interpret those signals coming from the time series data adds a whole other experience and level of context. So can you start with time series? Sure. But MES adds a lot more value because of all the context it provides.
All right. I don't see any more questions in the queue right now. So if anyone out there has a question and wants to enter it, now is the time to do so. Let's give everyone just a few seconds to do that. And all right, well, if one comes in, I will come back to it. But Joe, thank you again. It's an excellent presentation. I'd like to thank our speaker, Joe Gerstel. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, GE Vernova. And I know we're a little early today, but please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. On behalf of Industry Week, have a productive remainder of your day.